My name is Charles Rogol. I grew up in Seymour during the 50s and 60s, and this is the story of our family, the family business, and other things that we did during those times. My grandfather, Mayor, came to this country in 1907, sponsored by his sister-in-law who was living in Ansonia. Ansonia at that time was the hub of the Jewish community in the valley. My grandfather had a letter of employment and cash according to his Ellis Island papers. So once he got on the west side, he hired a cart to take him to the railroad station. Grand Central wasn't built yet, so it was further uptown. He left New York for New Haven and was picked up in New Haven and brought to Ansonia. He worked at a clothing store in Ansonia at that point. People from Seymour were complaining that there was nothing, they had to get to Ansonia to do things. So in 1910, members of the synagogue gave him a loan to open his own store in Seymour. In 1912, he sends for his wife, 4 children, and his mother-in-law, which at that point they lived over the store. Now, I think the original location is the VFW post on Lower Bank Street, but I haven't, we'd have to check, Historical Society would have to go check older, advertisements and whatnot to see where exactly the original location was. 1915, they moved to a house on First Street over by the up above the railroad tracks, right by the footbridge. And in 1924, my grandfather had the building built on the corner of Main and Bank. My father was the last of 6. He was born in 1918. All 6 children went through the Seymour public school systems. The older ones were immediately enrolled when they arrived. My father graduated Seymour in 1936. My father went off to World War II. This picture upstairs of him and one of his younger brothers taken in Italy in 1944 in front of the Vatican. He was in the Mediterranean, North African Mediterranean theater. As far as my dad came home from the war, at that point it was just he and my grandfather, so they did need the big house on First Street, so they bought the house on Spruce Street where I grew up, which is right next door to French Park. So I didn't have to have any kind of playground equipment or whatnot in the house. I had the whole park. I have a brother and a sister, both younger. And Dad was running the store. Grandpa was with him in the store until basically a year before he passed on, which was 1969. At which point I had graduated Seymour 68. It was off to college, and I've not, except for vacations and whatnot, I've never really established residency back in town. Growing Jewish in this area was, again, it was at different times and whatnot. The synagogue, like I said, started in Ansonia, but after the flood, moved to Derby. They had to abandon the building because of the damage. The building was built in 1956 as a synagogue and community center. So we had the sanctuary opened up to a multi-purpose room, which is a combination gym and had a full stage with a curtain and whatnot. There were crank-up basketball hoops in that area, so you could actually do gym. Um, there was the other side of the building had 6 classrooms. The basement was supposed to be a swimming pool, but it never got finished. So it was a very large open room, and if you walked to the back corner, the lockers were there, the showers were there, but the pool itself never got put in. The synagogue, Beth Israel, served the entire valley: Seymour, Ansonia, Derby, Shelton, Huntington, Oxford, Monroe. And it was everybody obviously, unless you lived in Derby, had to drive. We they belonged to what's known as United Synagogue, which is the conservative movement. Judaism, basically in the U.S., is broken down into 4 different, movements. As opposed, we have the Orthodox, the conservative, the Reform, and in some cases there is the ultra Orthodox or the Hasidim, and right now they're located mainly in Waterbury. At that time, for our conservative synagogue, we had services Friday night and Saturday. There was a daily morning service that was done, quite early, because obviously people had to open up their stores and whatnot. My father and grandfather basically ran the early morning service for as long as I can remember. The synagogue itself had a small chapel for the daily service, as opposed to opening up the large sanctuary. We even had a early morning service on Saturday mornings, so people could again attend a Sabbath service but still go open the business. This is, as I call it, assimilationist, or the American success story, where yes, you have a Jewish home life, but you have to go with the flow if you can want to stay, especially with a retail style businesses. At the time I was growing up, there were 7 Jewish families in town, only 2 of which had school-age children, ourselves and the Conowitzes. The others were older, like my aunt and uncle, who lived up the street and then built a new facility and lived next door. That was the corner of Spruce and Garden. Others lived in other places, in town, but we did see them primarily for the high holidays in the early fall. Obviously, with Grandpa living with us, we went more often on the holidays. The high holidays, we closed the store. Dad had a little sign he hung on the front door that said "Closed for the Jewish holidays." And those 3 days, the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the store was closed, because we all went to synagogue together. We had after school Hebrew school, 2 days a week, and Sundays. There was a parent, obviously our parents and the Conowitzes got together. They had a bus. Yeah, a bus. It was a Volkswagen from Valley Transportation, to take us from in front of the store to Derby for Hebrew school and bring us back. So we did that started in third grade through 7th grade, and then in 7th grade you usually had your bar or bat mitzvah, which is the ceremony to accept the Jewish traditions. At which point then you went on to Hebrew high school, which was 1 evening a week, and that lasted until your junior year of high school. Obviously our parents would take us, I guess they take turns, shuttling us back and forth to Hebrew High. We kept a kosher, with my grandfather living with us, we kept a kosher home, which means that A, meat and milk are separated, and B, you can only buy meat from a kosher butcher. Closest kosher butcher was New Haven. So we every so often we had a big freezer. Every so often my parents would go to New Haven. There was a Jewish section called Legion Avenue, which had the butcher shop, had the bakery, had the grocery store, and that's where we would stock up on things. We'd come home. My grandfather did his own what they call kosher for the meats. What you're supposed to do is remove as much of the blood as possible. So it's soaked and salted to do that. My grandfather didn't trust the butcher; he did it himself, and we did that for years. My mother would go to the butcher, bring home, and my grandfather would set up in the room with the washing machine and the slop sink, and would go ahead and take care of everything. Then it was wrapped up, put in the freezer, and we had for usually when my parents went to New Haven, we stocked up for 3 to 4 weeks. The other thing too with kosher is you have your canned goods and box goods. Will sometimes you'll see there's sometimes the little symbols on there, and we make sure that everything we brought into the house was that way. As far as attending Seymour schools, there wasn't, at least that I can remember, any much of a discrimination or anything like that, because you think about it, there were just 3 of us at Central and 2 at Maple Street, and we were obviously in different classes. The one thing I remember about Christmas pageants and whatnot is I said I'll do something, but I won't speak. But I don't remember any kind of anti-Semitism in town, because Dad was sometimes referred to as the mayor of Main Street. Besides that, the Chamber of Commerce, the Lions Club, the VFW, everything he did, it was everybody kind of got along. It's you basically had the town was primarily Eastern European. So you had the Russian Orthodox Church was very large. The Catholic Church was very large. The other ones were a little smaller. I joined Boy Scouts at the Lutheran Church. When I started with Cub Scouts, which is 9. And the funny story on that is I walk into the basement of the Lutheran Church over here, and said, "Wait a minute, I've seen this place before." And Reverend looks at me and says, "Yes, your kindergarten was here in this basement because the school was still being repaired after the flood." So yes, at that age, even deja vu. But as far as we had, again, being with my grandfather living with us, we celebrated all the holidays in the house. The 2, obviously, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. The biggest one was Passover, because that's when all the relatives would come. I can remember having a Passover Seder, or the Passover service in the house. I think we had 32, 33 people in our house. And yeah, all the furniture was pushed away. My good friends from Ansonia, they'd come with their business truck and bring tables and chairs from the synagogue. My aunts and uncles would come with food and dishes, because we didn't have dishes for that many. And my grandfather ran the home service, and it was quite nice. Moving this coming season obviously brings us to the holiday of Hanukkah. Hanukkah is one of the minor holidays in the Jewish religion concerning in this point. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the high holidays, they have their own prayer book. The three festivals that are listed in the Bible, Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot, have about 20 or 25 pages added to a normal Sabbath service. Hanukkah gets one paragraph. So you can see in the hierarchy how things are. Hanukkah is a post-biblical because it happened in approximately 200 BCE. The story of Hanukkah is that Alexander the Great had conquered Judea, and under his rule everything was fine. When Alexander died, the empire was split between two of his generals, the one situated in Egypt, one situated in Damascus, Syria. And the one in Damascus decides that everybody should be Greek and the Jewish religion should be suppressed. Well, there were people that didn't like that, and the Jews revolted, and even with a smaller armed force, they were able to drive the Greeks out of the land. Coming to the Jerusalem, back into the Second Temple, they again started to clean it out because it had been desecrated, and they could only find one jar of oil with a high priest seal to light the 7-branched menorah that illuminated the inner sanctums. They put the oil into the menorah, and the miracle of the holiday is that the oil lasted 8 days until they could make new oil. That's why a Chanukiah, the Hanukkah candelabra, has 8 branches. You have the 9th one in the middle is the so to speak the servant candle, because you can't individually light each one. How you do it is you light the one in the middle and then use that one to transfer the light to the others. Being that it's an 8-day holiday, you add 1 candle per night. You always start, if you're looking at the menorah, you always start at the far right. So first night is 1, second night is 2, but you light the new one first. And all the way through till the 8th night, you have everything going. Menorahs can be made out of any. I have ones that are metal. I have seen ones that are stone. I have seen ones that are clay. The originals obviously were olive oil. They weren't candles. You can sometimes see those in the museums. But Hanukkah is basically the celebration of light and our freedom. My grandfather founded the store, as you can see, in 1910. The building at Main and Bank was built in 1924. That's the building I knew of growing up. We sold men's clothing and family shoes. We had anywhere from infant all the way up to older people that had special needs. And to thank God for Bashura around the corner, that he could, if some people needed orthotic type shoes, he actually would take something we had and rebuild them. Plus, it was good at that point. It was good, go in there and get you could get your shoes resoled or rehealed. The holiday season, as we're approaching, we brought in, gift, as I call it, giftware. We brought in sweaters, ties, scarves, slippers, things of this type for as I call it, for gift giving. And we had a stock of wrapping paper, and that was one of the first things that I did, growing up, was sitting there. Okay, you're wrapping, people would come in and, I need this, wrap, learn how to quickly wrap all kinds of sizes of boxes. And then I moved up to operating the cash register, and then moved up to helping people find things and fittings and whatnot. The men's clothing mainly fed the factories. It was not that we had a few a few sport coats and dress slacks, but it was mainly set up for the factories. Work, had work shirts, work pants, work boots, work socks. We had at that time men did wear hats, so we had a fairly large selection of hats. I still have one. And we'd redo the display. They were 2 display windows on Main Street, and those display windows would be redone for the holiday with tinsel around them, with wrapped packages, with showing the giftware and things of this type. Then afterwards, it would go back to the regular display of shoes and workwear. The business did very well during those years before the malls and everything else opened up and siphoned off Main Street stuff. The Jewish businesses downtown, we had the men's store. Isaacson had the women's store down the block. Down Bank Street were the 2 competing furniture stores on opposite corners, Eckhart's and Seymour Furniture. And then later on, Shermer's Camera moved into the space in our building that was previously occupied by I would call it a beauty supply store. And the Bashura, obviously, and on the Bank Street side, Bashura had his space, and there was one space in between that usually was a lawyer's office, a doctor's office, and that was a kind of a mixed what tenant was in the third space. And then we had the advertising sign on the roof. But that's what we did. Obviously, we also helped out with we did all the police uniform measurements. We did everything for the Public Works Department for their, for what they wore. We did T-Right, interestingly enough, had its own store. But we supplied that. They would give us the order to say, okay, we need this, 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 and this, and we'd have it shipped from our distributor directly to their store. So that was, again, one hand washing the other. When Dad did pass on in 2007, and we were going, closing out the store, we found some of the things that are obviously here that will be back on display in the art towns after the holiday. And the building had an interconnecting basements, so there was all kinds of things. I definitely remember twice a year the delivery truck would show up. Once in the late spring with all the summer sneakers, and once in the early fall with all the winter boots and slippers. We had a trap door in the Bank Street sidewalk, and a roller conveyor underneath, so you could kind of open the trap door, drop the box down a chute, hit the roller conveyor, and into the basement. And then you could unpack it in the basement. There were shelves in the basement to unpack everything. And then when it came time to change inventory, well, everything came off the shelf upstairs. Everything from downstairs came up, got put on the shelf, and what you took out went back downstairs until after the holiday, at which point it reversed. And yes, you remember, people may remember, galoshes, the rubber buckle over boots that you put over your shoes. We did at that point, that was before all these waterproof boots and whatnot. That was one of the big sellers at this time of year. Obviously, like I said, scarves, gloves, hats, sweaters. As far as heavy coats and whatnot, we ordered those for people. We didn't stock much, but we could always order, and we could always get we could always go order strange sizes to know everybody. Because let's see, Dad was on the Chamber of Commerce. He was did things with the VFW, the Lions Club. He had a meeting every night of the week. My uncle, the doctor, he was big with Rotary. So with the town itself, and at that point, the farms still up on Bungay and Skokorat were still farms. It wasn't housing yet. So the town was only like 4,000, 4,500 in the mid 60s. So yes, you knew everybody, because the police department, walked the street. All the policemen came in to get measured for the uniform stuff. We had, the funny story I tell is when there was a Lions Club board meeting in our dining room. I'm upstairs in my room doing my homework. The following people are sitting in my dining room, besides my father, Toby Conowitz, my father was treasurer, Toby was secretary. Let's see, there was the assistant chief of police, the postmaster, Mr. Chuka, the chorus teacher, my assistant scoutmaster, Mr. Fromm, the plumber, and I forget the gentleman, the fellow did all the electrical work. There were 8 people sitting in our dining room. Like I said, he didn't dare do anything. Because everybody knew everyone. Again, with our Barbara Junko, Barb's class, and myself, our class was 152 when we graduated Seymour in 1968. So it was again definitely small town America.
Yeah.
That's about it. Everybody came into the store. The Matthews family, I forget what's his name from the bank. Everybody in town came into the store. From where we lived up by French Park, we went to Central School, and then down to the junior high school, which is now the community center. So we walked from home down 67, crossed. There was a crossing guard right by at the end of there was a crossing guard at the end of Spruce Street to cross us over to the Keywright side, and we walked down there because of the Route 8 entrance, and there was another crossing guard to put us back right by Day Street, and then we continued walking on down either to Central or crossed with the light and walked down Main Street to go down to the junior high. Coming back from school, obviously the store was right there after school. So we went after school every day. We stopped at the store. And my brother, my sister, and I all had chores. I had the big broom. I swept the sidewalk every day. My brother had the mop. He did the inside floor. My sister had the feather duster. See, she dusted off the counters, the displays, and whatnot. We could do and we could do homework in the back if we needed to. And on our Hebrew school pickup days, we just stayed at the store, after school till the bus came to take us to Derby. So the Hebrew school started in the third grade. So I know Franklin and I started first, and then Brian and Lillian, they're 3 years behind us, and then my sister was 4 years behind my brother. But by the time my sister was going to Hebrew school, the another family had moved into town with children at the Hebrew school, so at least my sister was not riding alone. So we had Valley Transportation had the little. Sometimes going to Hebrew school, we take because Valley Transportation had the bus concession from Waterbury to Bridgeport, and the bus ran right by school. So sometimes we just take the bigger bus to Hebrew school, and then the Volkswagen would bring us home. Seymour had a very good music program when I was in the school system. I started out in fourth grade. It was instrumental, and you could pick what you wanted. A cousin of mine had given me a clarinet, so I says, okay, I'll play that. We had a new music teacher in town, Mr. Starbird. He started out in the elementary schools when our class was in fourth grade. So I played clarinet fourth, fifth, sixth. We got to the junior high school in seventh, and Mr. Starbird moved with us to the junior high school. He got a promotion. And at that point, he offered me to say, instead of clarinet, I should pick up the tuba, because he needed a tuba player. And I decided, gee, being 1 out of 24 or 1 out of 2, I like 1 out of 2 better. Meanwhile, I've been playing the tuba ever since. So I played. We had the junior high school band that was 7th, 8th, and at 9th grade, the 9th graders could join up with the high school band for marching band for football games and parades. So yeah, I'll do that. When we moved up to the high school in 10th grade, Mr. Starbird came with us again. So I had the same music teacher from 4th grade through my senior year. Our senior year, there's a picture, I think it's here, showing the high school band at the stage on the high school, and there was 122 musicians out of 3 classes of 150. So we did the usual, school concerts. We played graduations. We did parades. The biggest thing was at that time was Memorial Day parades. We also played the fire department had usually a parade for their before they started their carnival. The Pumpkin Festival was not around at that point, but I think that was during my sister's time at school. But anyway, the thing I remember on that line is doing a double parade on Memorial Day. Seymour would always have theirs early in the morning. And of course, the parade would start out downtown, down around the firehouse, and go up 67, turn on Garden Street to come around because the Spruce Street corner was a little tight, and then go up the park to the military memorial there at the park. At which point the buses were at the other end of the park. We'd then go pack up, get on the buses, and go to either Ansonia or Derby for a 2 o'clock parade. We did that for 3 years. It was an interesting interesting thing. I still do play the two. I guess I did it quite well because I still play. I still play with a community band down in New Jersey, and we rehearse once a week and give a concert once a month. Everybody got involved in something. It was nice at those times to, because everybody was everybody was together. You went out and, in the summers or on the weekends you played outside. Nobody stayed in the house. We had again, living next door to the park. Friends, people I went to school with lived along the back side of the park, Garden Street. And we'd all, hang out together up on the playgrounds and whatnot. And one of the mothers there had a ranch bell on the back porch, and I guess all the moms coordinated what time was it to come home. She'd go out and okay, there's the bell, time to go home. My father was one of 6 children. There were 4 boys and 2 girls. They all graduated Seymour High School, and then went on to both my aunts were married in their 20s. One moved to Shelton and opened a branch of our store in Shelton. My other aunt, her husband worked for the IRS, and they moved to Pennsylvania. The 4 boys, 2 became physicians. One, Dr. Oscar, stayed in town. The other one, Dr. Lou, was in Danbury. The third brother, my Uncle George, was a pharmacist, and he was up in East Hartford. And of course, Dad took over the store. And with all the cousins and whatnot in Connecticut, we had quite and Grandpa living with us. We didn't have to go see relatives. They came to us. So Sundays, our house was always filled with visitors. Being it was one of my father's siblings, whether it was one of our cousins from the extended family, because my grandfather's sister lived in New Haven, and there was all of her descendants as well, spread out through the area. We also had my grandfather's brother lived in South Carolina, so we did take a couple of family trips down south to see them. So family was always a big thing with us and my father. The synagogue cemetery is in Orange. It's off of 34. And we have a family plot. Most synagogues in those days had their own cemetery. It wasn't a commercial operation, and that cemetery is still controlled by the synagogue that Derby. What you see over my shoulder here is a life-size cutout of my father. We had the sandwich sign out in front of the store. And this was in 2000 for the sesquicentennial. Dad was chosen as the Grand Marshal, and you can see here he's wearing a carnation on his suspenders. My father always wore a belt and suspenders. As you can see here in this picture, Dad was still very active with the store, with the community. He became ill in about 2005, and family found somebody to help out in the store at that point, and Dad was hospitalized June of 2007. Had to move him out of the house, and he passed away in September of 2007. At that point, we closed the business, and we tried to be try to own the building and lease it out, but that didn't quite work out between trying to have a management company while we were absentees. So in 2009, we sold both the house and the building. My cousin who's in New Haven, and it says, "Get the stone." Because that I know that was not concrete. That's how real stone, and that Grandpa had put over the front door.
Okay.
So we were able to salvage that, and it's here out on front. And like it says, it's the perfect place for it to be. One of the more interesting stories on this is during the 1960 presidential campaign. John Kennedy did ride through Seymour for a little bit, because I can remember walking from my house over to the ice cream store, because the motorcade was going to come off of Route 8, the Bank Street exit was going to come up, go down 67 under the railroad trestle, and then get back on Route 8 to heading towards Beacon Falls, Waterbury, right there. I can remember standing there waiting. I think some of us had cardboard signs, welcoming, the senator to the area, and just coming through in an open car, waving to people. I guess there was, we had a fairly good crowd there at the, right by the gas station ice cream store. But there may have been people further down. I didn't know, because I didn't walk down there. But it was that, because the Route 8 bridge was built in the late 50s. Once, the flood had taken out Route 8 in that area, Department of Transportation put in the big bridge, and why it's up so high is to make sure that it's over top of the railroad tracks, because the railroad still had to go through, so the highway was elevated to make sure that it didn't bother the train.